On April 29, 1945 at 11 o'clock, the 3rd Battalion of the 157th Infantry Regiment of the 45th American Division, having overcome several sniper ambushes, approached the western gate of the Dachau concentration camp. By this time, most of the guards had already left the camp, and the last commandant of Dachau, Martin Weiss, had also escaped. SS men remained in the camp, who were imprisoned in a disciplinary prison for various offenses. Together with them were Hungarians from the 26th Waffengrenadier SS Division and a group of wounded Wehrmacht soldiers stationed in a local hospital. They probably didn't have enough transport to evacuate. At about 11:05, soldiers found a death train at the western gate. This was the name of the railway trains in which the bodies of dead prisoners were unloaded for sending to the crematorium. This sight shocked everyone. 40 wagons full of people's bodies. The dead were extremely emaciated and looked like skeletons. As one of the soldiers recalled, it was the most terrible sight in his entire life. Many soldiers felt sick, some went into uncontrollable hysterics. At this time, a group of 4 SS men, intending to surrender, moved from the opposite end of the train to the American soldiers. They obviously chose the wrong time for this. The soldiers, shocked by what they saw, did not even begin to negotiate with them. They were told to get into the train car, after which Lieutenant Walsh shot everyone. And before you continue watching, please subscribe to my channel and like it. Of course, this is optional, the main thing is to be sincere. At 11:20, the first American soldiers entered the camp. According to the memoirs of camp inmate Nuren Gun, the events unfolded as follows. SS Obersturmführer Heinrich Skodzensky came out to meet the Americans in SS uniform and highly polished boots and shouted, "Heil Hitler!" The contrast between him and the American officers, unshaven and tired after several days of fighting, was so impressive that they simply became enraged. An American officer spat in his face and shouted "pig" and shot him in the head. This story is popular in journalism, but is disputed by professional researchers. In addition, the surrender process was filmed by numerous American correspondents, and a completely different person whose identity has been reliably established was captured in the photo. It was SS Untersturmführer Heinrich Wicker, the eldest of the remaining officers in the camp. He arrived at the camp only at the beginning of April 1945, together with a group of prisoners who were being driven on foot from Neckarells to Dachau. Heinrich Wicker is present in the photos in different parts of the camp, which means that he remained alive for at least several hours after the arrival of American soldiers. However, he was not in Dachau City Prison, where all the surviving prisoners were housed. Officially, he was considered missing. According to the testimony of 2 surviving German guards, Heinrich Wicker was killed by one of the American soldiers. At about 12 o'clock, American soldiers began sorting prisoners. SS men were taken to one column, Wehrmacht soldiers and hospital staff to the other. About 70 selected SS men were led into the courtyard. Along the way, several people were killed, and even a specially conducted investigation did not allow to find out the circumstances of their deaths. In the courtyard, the surviving prisoners were placed against the wall under the supervision of a machine gunner. As soon as Lieutenant Colonel Sparks, who commanded the battalion, left the yard, machine gun fire rang out. The Indian machine gunner, nicknamed Birdseye, fired. Sparks immediately ran back and fired several shots into the air with his pistol to stop him. According to the officer's recollections, the machine gunner was hysterical, sobbing and shouting that the prisoners were trying to escape. The machine gunner was taken away, and another shooter took his place with stronger nerves. As a result of this shooting, 17 people were killed and several others were injured. After another departure of Sparks, a group of prisoners armed with shovels and batons came into the yard. They began to beat up some SS men. Some soldiers tried to stop them, others did not prevent the beatings. As stated in the materials of the American investigation, they turned away and pretended not to notice what was happening. By the evening of April 29, the liberators left Dachau. A guard company took their place, engineers came. The prisoners were sent back to the barracks. There was a typhus epidemic in the camp, and American soldiers quarantined it. On the first night after the liberation of Dachau, about 300 prisoners died in the camp. Some of them were killed for collaborating with the Germans. The rest died of disease and exhaustion. According to the testimony of Nuren Gun, several previously starved prisoners died from overeating. The next day, local residents were brought from the surrounding settlements, who were involved in unloading bodies from the death train. Not far from the camp, bulldozers dug several large trenches in which the dead prisoners of the camp were buried. Some of the bodies were buried in the cemetery of Luttenberg, and carts with corpses were specially driven through the city center so that residents could clearly see the cruelty of the German concentration camps. Despite the quarantine and the efforts of American doctors, the typhus epidemic could not be brought under control for a long time. Over 2,000 prisoners died of the disease in May 1945. In June, the epidemic began to decline. 196 people died during this month. Only in the middle of the summer of 1945, 2 months after the end of the war, all the prisoners of Dachau finally found freedom. In 1986, a book was published by Howard Buchner, a former American Army medic who participated in the liberation of the camp. In the book with the telling title, The Avenger's Hour, he picturesquely tells how American soldiers executed all Germans and Hungarians that day, while 40 people were killed by former prisoners. In May 1945, the American Army conducted an investigation into the mistreatment of prisoners. The commission found that on the day of the liberation of Dachau, about 50 SS men and other camp workers were killed. 12 SS men were killed by former prisoners, the rest were shot by soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Sparks throughout his life claimed that his soldiers shot no more than 30 people. And the rest of the prisoners were sent to the prison of the city of Dachau, which was located next to the camp. The party of prisoners on Sparks' orders was accompanied by Lieutenant Walsh and Chaplain Lowe. For obvious reasons, the surviving guards of the concentration camp after the war did not talk about their service. But at least 2 SS survivors and 1 medic are known. Another survivor, Hans Lindberger, left a short memoir about the events of that day, in which he confirmed the testimony previously given by Sparks. Hans Lindberger was in a group of SS men, at whom he opened fire with a bird's-eye machine gun, but survived and was not even wounded. Although the investigation identified by name almost all those who took part in the shootings, General Patton ordered the case to be closed, citing the severe psychological